Hello, everybody. Just making sure I can be seen. Hey, y'all. Welcome, welcome. So my name is Diamond Ray, and today I am going to be talking about Beloved, Part 1, Section 2. So please make sure you all have your questions ready. If you all would like to get a copy of the syllabus for Beloved, you can definitely check that out at www.smartbrown girl.com. I'm just going to wait a little bit for folks to show up. Hey.
Take the background off.
Oh, okay.
Oh man. No, make the screen we should fill out. It should be half and half.
Okay.
There.
Like this.
Yes. Hold on. Are we live already? None people are watching.
Yes, we're live.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say there's something I want you to go in and change. That's fine. We're already live. All right. Where's my book? Let me go get my book, y'all.
Okay.
Okay. Let's get into this. Hello. Usually we go
Hi.
after, but yeah, I just got all the behind the scenes. This is me logging on. But I think because I didn't update from yesterday, so it just sends out social messages. Discord that I need to delete. Beloved. Oh no, I did update it. Oh look, I did good. I updated it yesterday because I knew this was gonna happen when I ended the chat with Bree. I was like, let me go ahead and update it because I know. Okay, so I did it right.
Cool.
I'm feeling really good about myself. Wow. Sometimes, things make sense.
Absolutely. So do you was there a specific question that y'all ended on, or it was more just
Yes, we ended. Actually, I need to pull the syllabus up.
Yeah, I have it in front of me.
I do not.
No worries. Next time I can wait for you to go live.
Yeah, it's fine. Cancel. Sorry for the delay. Here's the syllabus. So we stopped midway through part 1. We didn't even get there out.
And we should be live on all the platforms, right? Twitter, YouTube, and okay.
We're on YouTube.
My Facebook isn't popping up. Okay, finally, here it is. Got it.
Why don't me and Nicole just had this discussion last week, and I do not remember talking about the ghost source of discontent. But we did talk about we can start on page 12 of the syllabus.
Okay. All right.
Because we kind of got up to where her milk was stolen.
Got you.
Yes.
All right, so if we're going to start with page 12 of the syllabus, everybody. And again, y'all can get the syllabus on Smart Brown Girl website, and that's in the description of this live. So, considering the following quotes about Paul D, not even trying, he had become the kind of man who could walk into a house and make the woman cry, because with him and his presence, they could. There was something blessed in his manner. Women saw him and wanted to weep, to tell him that their chests hurt and their knees did too. Strong women and wise saw him and told him things they only told each other. So next is risky thought. Paul D, very risky. For it used to be slave woman to love anything that much was dangerous, especially if it was her children she had settled on to love. The best thing he knew was to love just a little bit, everything, just a little bit. So when they broke its back or shoved it in a croaker sack, well, maybe you'd have a little love left over for the next one. And so those two quotes about Paul D, Mr. Paul D, were on page 20 and page 54. And the questions below these quotes on the syllabus are, how does the arrival of Paul D at 124 set the plot into motion? And what does he represent for Seth and Denver? Seth and Denver.
Paul D is a character that was fascinating to me because in this era of literature, you don't often get Black men who aren't violent. Toni Morrison never writes a simple character. All her characters are always very complicated. And, the men were shiftless in Sula. Next year we'll have to revisit Song of Solomon. I don't quite remember liking Milkman or many of the male characters in Song of Solomon. But then when I think of her contemporaries, so Gloria Naylor, the men in Octavia Butler, kind of okay.
Okay.
Alice Walker, men barely exist. Alice Walker, she was not a fan, right? We understand. So in this era, there's not for Paul D, especially because Paul D comes out of a world of violence, right? His existence is violence, right? He does not have autonomy over his existence. So there's this violence consistently happening to his flesh, to his body, to his personhood, if he's ever allowed to be conceived as a person. And he still does have a struggle with power, but he doesn't choose to invoke that power dynamic or that perception of his manhood being attached to power through a violence against beloved Seth or Denver. Now he does still have a patriarchal aspect to him in that he wants to place his perception of the women firmly on them. You know what I mean? He doesn't really to know beloved, but is he wrong? Because we know beloved isn't necessarily a source of positivity and joy, right? So we know where beloved is kind of headed. So the way he enacts with the spirit in his person form is rather complicated, but he doesn't really. He only want to hear her. He don't like her off rip. He don't like her.
As soon as he saw her at the door.
And Denver, he was just indifferent to. But I think Denver was also indifferent to him. So, I think he's one of the more fairer, more compassionate. Even this description of him about women wanting to cry and essentially women wanting to be vulnerable with him because that was kind of the energy he brought to the table. And interesting enough for these people to come from Sweet Home, which is such a violent, it's a plantation. So it's slavery. The slavery we don't often acknowledge. But all the men are kind of very compassionate people. 6-0, Paul D, Paul A, Holly, Haley, however you say it. They all have a tenderness to them. So, I thought Paul D was very, we're in part 1. I done read the whole book now, and Paul D was, I thought he was going to go a very predictable way, and he did not.
Okay. How do you think you mentioned him struggling with some type of power dynamic? how did that come across to you that he had some type of struggle with power? Because like you mentioned, for me it was more like he was so super like not nonchalant but kind of go with the flow, how can I be of service type man, and I see Black Messiah.
He was beaten. You know, I'm doing all. I did a discussion with Dr. Nicole. I did a discussion with Bree yesterday about Hortense Spiller, which is what we're reading on the expiration track. And so now, every time I want to talk about Paul the person, Hortense is like, you know, they're not like, it's like the body and the flesh. We have to be careful with the language we use, because what was happening to these people, right? And so that the syllabus pulls right from page 54, which is actually a thought from Paul D, in that he's looking at Seth and saying that it is risky to love your own children. You know, it is risky as a Black woman, as a Black, and then we might wait. She's not a woman though. You know what I mean? Like the economy and the way we see womanhood and motherhood and personhood are not things that Paul D or Seth had access to in their time. Right. Even when the school teacher comes up to what triggers her killing her child is because the school teacher arrives to collect her back because of the fugitive slave law. And he refers to our children as the things that he owns, not as children, not as human beings. So you know, when he's talking about it's risky to love, they all understand that they don't even get to own any of their limbs. And then this is part 1, so we don't really get into Paul D's story until like the end of part 3.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh.
Well, even the little part that they mentioned where he was in the chain gang, that was.
Is that mentioned in part 1?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Unless it's a different. Well, I do have a different thing, but it follows the same sections, I believe. Yeah.
You know, I was just trying to get all the details, because I was like, what is Alfred, Georgia? Because, you know, Warrington goes back and forth. She goes back and forth. It's not like a congruent linear track. And so some days you are a day after the carnival. You're back, 18, 15 years. And so, yeah, Paul D is one of the more I think. And for this era, and I think for the era of writing where you do sort of have this Black feminist literature that's being very like Toni Cade Bambara, and then Bell Hooks is social theory, but even in writing, you get a lot of male characters that truly are feckless ass niggas. Like, Paul D is one of the more lush Black male characters from a Black feminist author that I really have been able to enjoy. And for all the trauma that exists in the book, I really appreciated that he wasn't a part of precipitating that trauma.
I agree. It was refreshing to see him kind of there being with these women. And although he had his opinions about them, there wasn't too much trauma at all coming from this Black man sharing this space with these spirits and these women. So I can agree with that. Yeah. So in the chat, we have Rashonda says, he seems to want women in a certain place to a certain extent. Like, I got the feeling he felt like Denver should have often married because he mentioned a couple of times that she grown.
You can add the comments to the screen.
Okay. Really? Let's see.
If you click on it and reach it, I think it says add to screen.
Yes. Yes. So I agree. I think Black people obviously we tell stories in a lot of ways. We say things by not saying things, and telling someone that they grown, that's get up out the house. That's the first thing. So I definitely agree with that. And it was like, well, she old enough. Why is she here type energy, even though he just walked through the door himself. So yeah. I definitely that male entitlement.
He was a little like, okay. Discernment, whatever, or a deference. Yes. That is, he definitely flexed that a little bit. But he didn't go overboard with it, right? He didn't, because he also understood it wasn't his house to lay down the law. And so he got irritated. He broke some things. The spirit broke some things. He fixed the things better than how he had found them as well. I think there was a lot of balance to his character.
I can see that.
I'm both saying I can't see the screen from my way over here. Oh, you know what? I could look at this on YouTube. Just turn my phone down.
Yeah, he did put it back together better than he found it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but his attitude toward the spirit of a love was just kind of like, I don't got time for this, or like, I feel like he was very much like, I need somewhere to lay my head and lay with a woman. A ghost is not putting me out. Like, I've been through too much. That's the type of energy that I was getting from him when the breaking of the furniture happened, and he put together just like, well, you gonna do what you gonna do. I'm gonna be here, which is kind of what they had in the house.
Is he wrong though for like this random girl? And yeah, you know, you're looking at her. Where do you get new shoes from? Where do you just come from? And you just pull up, and then all of a sudden you're allowed to be in this house. Like, you know, Seth and him have a history. It's kind of like, you know, like the pledge process, except for they didn't voluntarily pledge, right? You know, like, you know, they don't, you don't never want to do that shit again. Also, it's like, you know, we done been through some trauma together. We done been tortured together. And so how do you just pull up? What part of this, like, how do you just enter into this woman's life and get a space and you don't have no caution or concern? So I don't feel like it's invalid in, you know, being creeped out by Beloved.
Yeah, she was definitely creepy. Someone said, why she's so childish? Are you talking about Beloved or Denver? Because I imagine you're not talking about Seth.
Oh, somebody's saying it's pronounced Setha. I have to go back and read the or listen to the audiobook to see what the pronunciations are and how people.
Okay. Well, Seth.
We'll have to watch the movie as a group.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie. I only saw snippets, and I'm just like, wow. I think I need to step back and come back after reading this, because there's obviously stories being said here. Another Facebook user said he's competing against Denver for Seth's attention. Yes, absolutely. And it's I don't know if I want to call it beautiful, because it does come off as obsessive, every one of the characters.
Okay. Really? I didn't feel like Denver or Paul D's wanting her attention. Paul D was fighting for like moments, because like Beloved pops up and she wants every plot. You know what I mean? Like, she wants it all and more. Like, she is, like, Paul D knows, like, all he gets is a moment she is her in bed, and he actually wants more than just the sex. I didn't find it to be obsessive. I actually thought that was noble for a man to acknowledge that, like, I'm not just trying to be two bodies in a bed. I actually have, like, you know, intimacy and vulnerability and moments as a friend,
right,
partner with this woman. And I think Denver is all she's known as her mother. And in an era where, like, this is still the slave era, so like Black people did not get to be parents or children with parents,
right?
You know? So like for them to be holding on to the little bit that they have in Seth,
absolutely.
The only obsessive person to me was Beloved. Beloved.
Beloved. Well, I was definitely talking about Beloved, but also Denver, and that I guess it's the constant. It's like the constant fear of abandonment, which it totally makes sense. Like, all her family member who left or died, even baby Sugg, like, there's just this constant fear of what I care about is going to be snatched away for something I can't control. So that definitely makes sense. But I still think, even just the way Denver is obsessive, I think towards Beloved, I think because she shares the same type of love, because she shares the same type of love for her mother, is more like, I want her to be here too, so we can revel in our love for her together, which is beautiful, but still obsessive.
Denver has her moment because Denver wants Beloved, and Seth can go, and Paul can kick rocks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you think Denver feels more strongly for Beloved than she does Seth?
At a point, she does. She initially does. But I also think it's the idea of newness. It's the idea of something that has caused so much chaos and never been in human form. And like, it's like they've come. You know what I mean? Like, Denver lacks human interaction.
Yeah,
And
she does.
so for Beloved to come and just to get a moment, like, she's describing this moment where she finally feels seen because Beloved looked
Mm.
at her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
this is like her first love relationship, essentially. And so I think she comes to her senses, though. She realizes the quagmire that this presents. She
Mm-hmm.
realizes that this is not a healthy relationship between the three of them. But she's just trying to
Mm.
hold on, and then because in the end, she does not throw her mother under the bus. I'm not trying to give away the whole book because we only own
Mm-hmm.
part one. So let's
Yes.
get back to the syllabus. Okay. So the next question is: Paul D believes that it is dangerous for Seth to love anything or anyone as much as she loves Denver. What do you make of Seth and Paul D's argument after Denver left the table?
Mm.
And I believe that is in the 50s. Let me see if that's one of my bookmarks.
Yeah, I think it has to do with what one of the other commenters said about Paul D just wanting Denver to be grown and say, hey, she's her own person. Let her be free. That's kind of what I got from it. It's such a traumatic time, and they've gone through so much without really having the time to fully grieve and heal without having to worry about survival. So I think like these intimate moments of just who how can we parent, what happens what does that look like to let someone be free when you're afraid of losing them on both ends, and now you have this new person who's coming in and may or may not have an objective view of the relationship dynamics between these generations of women. So I think that was kind of his presence and what that did for Seth. But I think her loving her children, it's an effect of Baby Suggs, kind of her energy and her effect on the whole everyone, since she's the matriarch of all of these people, and just the love that I think that Seth tries to replicate that she experienced from her, even though she wasn't her blood mother. Because they didn't have any masculine energy for quite some time up until that point.
So the next point is Seth recalls a conversation with Baby Suggs about the transitory nature of men in slavery, during which she explains, a man ain't nothing but a man, but a son, well, that's somebody. And then I thought of that's me and somebody's son. Repurposing quote from Toni Morrison.
Wow.
Me,
Yeah.
somebody's son. It is so interesting that in the 21st century, we as Black folk have a whole meaning about me and somebody's son. And Toni Morrison, what was this book written in 70, 80 something? 82? This is her. Isn't this her second book? At the beginning of the syllabus when the book was written.
87, I think.
87. Okay. We're taking it from a book set in the 1800s. And it's a very salient point, right? About because Black folks again don't get to be families. So to come and then later on, I keep when because everything in part one, like Toni Morrison takes you for a ride and then connects back together at the end of part 3 and in part 4 of the book. So Paul D has a point where he talks about how it felt to be around Black folks that have generations. How jealous he was of Black folks who got to have generations because that was not the norm. And so, Suggs making the point that for her to be able to raise Holly when all her other kids were sold and lost and killed, and then for Holly to therefore be somebody's son because he got to stay with his mother was a very big deal.
Right. That definitely, yeah.
Yes, Seth was able to marry somebody's son. That's a very big deal. So now that meme has a whole extra layer of meaning to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because when I was reading that part and thinking about somebody's son, it made me think about just the idea that I think is prevalent in like critiques of the Black community and the lack of nuclear families, because there's always a Black single mother raising sons and the problems that make that causes to happen, which I've heard from some Black male acquaintances of mine.
The exploration track. Papa's maybe, because Spillers breaks down the language that we even use. Like, how did we even get to this train of thought? Why are we even talking about this point or this idea, right? You know, she really challenges us around our language, and how we have reproduced the Moynihan report and the destructiveness of the Moynihan report within our language. Talk about the Black family and the Black community.
Right.
Very good. You know what I mean? So you can do it.
It's all connected. Yeah, but I found that even saying to a lot of the Black men that I know, hey, I do have a study or a paper, they don't really want to read it. Well, I'll say about 85% of them don't really reach out after that conversation and say, hey, can I see what you cited? It don't really happen like that. So maybe I got to find some more tactics, or let's see what some people are saying. Yeah, competitive for Seth's attention. I felt like someone said I felt like Denver was childish. I think, yeah, I definitely get a childish vibe from Beloved and Denver.
I want to be so kind to Denver, though. Denver has been through so much, and Denver really is just a product of her environment. I feel like, you know, Beloved is nefariously childish. I believe Beloved is just, Denver is just a little sheltered. Denver is just a little kept in the house too long. That's all. Just a little outside air.
Yeah, Beloved, she definitely has some. And even reading it, I rarely have, I guess, emotional responses to specific characters outside of Toni Morrison, but like specifically Beloved, I definitely felt like, I don't want to say it was a negativity, but just like ooh, something's about to happen, or she cooking up something. It's like when somebody walking in the door.
I was waiting. I was in the Florida water. It's happening right now.
Like, and it's crazy, even the idea of like community care. I was thinking about it. Like, again, the privilege during this time to have generations, to have family, to have someone there to care for. You have this Black girl coming up and just showing up in front of your house. And the first thought is, all right, well, let's get her something. She could be on the run. Even Paul D, he offered the same type of kindness in that, well, I don't want to ask her specific questions because she may be on the run. That idea of just really, let me take care of you because I don't know what you've been through, is something that I think has kind of grown and changed, I think, in the Black community. And I think that it's not lost because obviously certain circumstances had changed, but just that idea of, come on, I'll take care of you. There's no date that you have to get out the house. I know you've been through something. Let me help out, I think was very strong. Okay, so this Facebook user says, yeah, it seemed like he wanted a form of a family which was broken after the carnival when Beloved shows up. You're right. He had a good day. He was saying hi to everybody on the street.
He was good himself. You know what I mean? He had a little bit of joy. He had him a piece of joy he was going to hold on to.
Then she showed up. And she says she's been missing the ghost in the house and know that entity is Beloved. I'm guessing you're talking about Denver. I wish I could see who says it. This person says, and Denver is an only child, so I could see why. I felt like Denver loved Beloved in the beginning because she was she wants that sisterly bond. She loves her mom, but her Seth isn't really present. You think Seth isn't present?
I mean, I think Seth. So in the we're still in part 1. So again,
Yes.
again, girl, I believe this is discussed in part 2 or 3, right?
Okay.
This is why I have like a hard time, because sometimes I'm like, should I read the book ahead of time? I got to, because we have, I'm already, I'm now getting into our March book. So I could be ahead of the curve. But then I'm also like, I should read with y'all so I can really have these conversations in real time. Because when you like at this point in the book, I expect you to be highly confused.
Oh yeah.
I do not feel like you should read part 1 of Beloved and be like, this makes so much sense. I think you should be reading it and be like, girl, what the hell?
Especially when the 4 horsemen came, I was just like,
yeah,
where are we at? When are we?
What time period is happening? Because a lot of the book really gets. Oh, my camera just flipped off.
Oh, it's back.
That's so weird. Let me look at my battery. My battery.
Beloved.
My battery is full. That is so odd. But yeah, the idea of it, where is Seth mentally heading at? I do think. Well, I know that she is starting to check out. But there's a very explicit reason for her checking out, and she makes a conscious decision later on in the book to mirror Baby Suggs. But also, I don't think in part 1 we get maybe at the end of part 1 we get the explanation for what it meant for Baby Suggs to go looking for color.
Yeah.
All she was look for color because color didn't exist in her real life. Just focus on color because color was the only thing that no re-memory of trauma would enter into. And but we do get in part 1 where Seth is talking about her memory, a re-memory of Sweet Home, and knowing that, or remembering the plantation as visually beautiful, even though the things that made it beautiful were tools of violence. So like the trees, which were used for punishment and lynching and whippings. But and she says, it's a shame that her memory of them, even when she sees them, she still sees beauty, even though it's filled with these memories of violence. She still sees the beauty of these particular types of trees that were on the plantation. So yeah, there's a lot to pull. There's a lot to extrapolate. So if you're reading this and there's a lot of questions arising, you're supposed to have a lot of questions. This is definitely a book that's supposed to strike conversation. And so I definitely want to encourage folks that if they have questions, to post them in the Discord or on the Facebook group, because they're supposed to spur conversation, because everyone is going to interpret this book differently. And that's how it was intended.
Yeah. And I definitely think processing it with others is necessary, especially for this book. All right. So, and we can go back to the syllabus, right? Because we should be doing that. But Priska says Paul D was the only sane person at that point. I don't know if I will put sanity into any of these characters. Like, I don't know, and I obviously don't know the definition of sane off the top of my head. I'm not a doctor, but at that point, when you're in survival mode, I'm not sure that's a part of the conversation, And it's funny. I think I read a tweet and it was like, can you picture someone, or can a couple and have one partner in the couple who is raised off of love versus one person in a couple who is raised on survival? Can that work? And I thought about that. And how I think everyone in here is survival. Like, it's just straight up, I gotta save myself. What's the closest thing to me? My child. I gotta save my child. What's happening?
They know that they gotta save something. It's like this reading Spillers. What is self? Do they have a self to save? So when we really get into the biography of Seth and what Sweet Home was, and why seeing the hat of school teacher spurred her to slit the throat of her child, who never actually gets named, is always referred to as daughter crawling, maybe crawling ?
Mm.
So yeah, I imagine if you are listening to the audiobook version of this, please do not beat yourself up if you just are like, or I don't know what the hell I just heard. Did I hear what I just heard? You did. You heard what you just heard. You did. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
And
why
I
we
definitely reread it.
to help you work through this text. Because I'm reading this and I'm like, I know is that the scene that I just saw on the page?
Or the white stairs and the baby crawling. I'm like, all right, we in the house, we out the house. Who the baby? Oh no, the baby not Denver. I was just
part 4, and there is a chapter in Beloved's voice.
Oh. Is it clear? Is it clear though? In the
beginning? No. And I'm gonna go back listen to the audiobook because I want to hear Tony read that chapter. Because I was like, I just bookmarked it and said we will discuss this in the book club. That child said the skinless man.
Honestly, I want to know what's going on in her head. Jesus, that.
I mean, I got it, but like this is one of those texts. Like if you like, it's meant to be read more than once.
Yeah.
It's such a good book though. Like I enjoyed this so much.
Yeah, that rich characters. Back to the syllabus.
But yeah, I think when we think about the self, like what are they trying to save? Or can they even do they have a self to save? They know that they have to save a thing, that they have to save something. And I think that's what kind of keeps them holding on. Paul D and going through like Paul D went through some shit, bruh. He went through some shit. And he still understands that he wants to, hold on to something, hold on to a piece, and is it even a piece of himself? What does he have left? And so, this is how they survive is by not having these conversations about memories that hurt. And I'm a person that loves history, right? And I grew up with my great grandmother who was born in 1904. She didn't want to talk about nothing. Ever. She's like, why are you asking all these questions?
Yeah.
You be thinking, oh wow, I'm gonna go, you thinking you could probably have the intro album with your grandma talking about fuck the haters. But no, your grandma don't want to talk about nothing.
At all.
It really is like reading this challenges my thoughts around elders who don't want to talk about their past. Who we think because we have turned their struggle into events, right? The civil rights wasn't an event. It was not the sacrifice of people's autonomy over their livelihoods, right? Children desegregating schools wasn't really fun. Okay.
No.
So those children who are now adults or elders might not really want to talk about their experience having to go through something that is so traumatic that they just, even for us that have gone through traumatic experiences.
Right.
Even sit down and talk about my trauma.
No. And that's something I actively think about as we're going through this pandemic. Like when I'm 45, 55, 60, I'm like, if my child or niece or whatever, because I don't know if I'm having kids, but if someone asks me, hey, what were you doing? How was it? You are in your 20s in the pandemic. I'm like, I don't know if I want to revisit that, girl, so.
This ain't even the worst of it. So many of us have gone through some sort of like trauma against our body, right? And when if you ever had to go to therapy after a traumatic event and then sitting down and talking about it, it's painful. And a
Absolutely.
lot, what's therapy in 1860 something, right? So like these are folks that they just had to live through it. They never had the opportunity to process it, to make something of it. And now they're trying to hold on. But what are they holding on to, right? So like when we get introduced to Stamps Paid, and he has this thing about knock it on the door. Because that's what he's holding on to, right? That's something that matters to him. And it's a memory for him, and he doesn't want to shatter that memory because it's a positive memory for him. It's a positive note for him in a life that has been so traumatic. And that Seth moves the way she moves, or that Paul D kind of moves the way they move, because who wants to think, it's hard for them to even sit down and be like, hey, I know you, friend, because I know you is centered in such a traumatic isn't even a good enough word for what they want.
No, It's not. And experiencing things that language didn't exist to describe as well. It's just like a lot of times if we don't have something, a name for something, it doesn't exist. So just having so much trauma, having so many things happen that you really can't name, and even just speaking it is it's powerful. And when Denver, I believe she was speaking to whatever that boy's name was who asked her about her mom, Nathan, who, poor Nathan, he just was, wanted to know what was going on with her mom. And she can't, that memory literally was buried. She's like, forget school. I'm avoiding this entirely. I don't want to talk about it. Like, bye, forget it. And it was something that literally brought her joy, to learn to read and write. So I think that's powerful, having something to claim as your own. But also, what does it mean to not want to speak or acknowledge something so integral to your life, to the point that you would sacrifice another thing that you love just as much, which I think for Denver was learning and being in school. She didn't even have to see other people in her class. They didn't really care for her because she was always just up in front, wanting to be front and center and answer all the questions. So the fact that all that it took for her to give up something she enjoyed so much shows just the trauma that it was to lose her mother in that way.
Yeah. All right, we can get into the next question. Let me get back to my syllabus. So many tabs open on my phone. I think we already talked about that. So we can go on to Amy Denver.
Okay.
On page 14 of the syllabus. So during are y'all saying that on the audiobook Toni Morrison pronounces it Setha? Is that what people are saying? During Seth's birth of Denver, she's assisted by Amy Denver, a white indentured servant from Boston. Is Amy from Boston? Is that what y'all got from that? Amy was traveling to Boston to get her some velvet. Some carmine velvet.
Yeah, I don't think she was from there. Carmine.
Amy assisted Seth, who told her she was named Lou out of distrust, give birth and nurture her new baby. Upon leaving Seth at the Ohio River, she declares, she's never going to know who I am. You going to tell her who brought her into the world? You better tell her, you hear? Say Miss Amy Denver of Boston. Seth responds by naming her Denver. So what significance does Amy Denver play in the life of Seth?
Well, she definitely saved her. And I think, and I feel like it's so cliche to talk about like a white savior character. And I don't know if that was prevalent in the time that Toni Morrison wrote this, but just, she was there and she helped her. She got her feet together. She helped her back. She helped her deliver the baby. And she really didn't have to. She could have just said.
But Amy was trifling. Amy was very little white girl. Come on now. And Toni didn't write white savior trope. Toni wasn't gay, so she didn't even write Amy. Like none of Toni's characters are neatly packaged into a box. Right?
Absolutely.
Amy's kind of a girl that don't shut up. That comes from, tries to posit her indentured servitude to being similar to the slavehood of a Seth, and it's not the same.
No.
It's not the same.
So wait, what does she gain though? What does Amy gain by helping Seth for all of that time when she could have been on her way to Boston?
I done found me a nigga woman in the woods delivering her baby. That is a great story. She had a door. She needed a story to tell. She had a story to tell. Guys, I don't know. I didn't really. I mean, the character obviously is important because it also leads to the implausibility of Seth's story. Nobody believes Setha at all, because what white woman in 1850 something fitting to help a pregnant white woman on a sinking boat, a boat with a hole in it,
right,
deliver its own baby? It don't make no kind of sense.
No.
Nope. Every now and then you do kind of meet a feral white woman in the woods on her Eat Pray Love shit for some velvet in Boston in 1850 something, and
Hmm.
Who's just spelling my name, asking if I think that? What do I think? You can take the question off the comment off the screen.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I clicked another one. Well, someone said her struggle to freedom, that fight, they both were insane and running from somewhere. So that's what.
I think Amy was absolutely running away from, and but like it's a different kind of thing, right? Seth didn't really have a clear idea of what she was getting away from or getting away to. She knows what she was getting away from. Amy, on the other hand, knew that all she needed to do was go to a new city and she could recreate herself, right? She could talk her way.
Right.
This ability, I talk a lot now, but I'm a Black woman in the 21st century. I can't imagine as a Black woman in the 19th century during slavery that I'm going to be inclined to be a very talkative, what about type person, talking about all my dreams and ambitions to anybody who would listen. Because I think Seth and Amy's relationship allowed Amy to feel intelligent, meaningful. It allowed Amy to feel like she a white woman in 1850 something, so she get to feel above all the Negroes. But it may, there's also something about having an intimate relationship with a Black person, that exchange, that sort of altruistic exchange that white folks get in being benevolent to a
right
person,
an individual, right? Yeah. And even just touching, like she touching her body, like she was rubbing her feet, like aggressively taking care of her back, and it kind of highlighted the dichotomy that Baby Suggs was in that part. When she was in the clearing in the woods, and she was, I don't know if it was a call to action, an open prayer, but just talking about joy and love and flesh and how we should really care for one another unabashedly and be free. I think just the idea of touch was something that I noticed throughout this first part. And when Seth was going through this experience, how Amy was all up on her to help her out. And it wasn't well, you could go over there when your feet are healed. It was like, all right, let me get you some of this, girl. Whatever, you better do this. And it was a very intimate relationship, very quick that they had. Can hide that. This person said Amy ass was crazy and didn't have them all, and she knew what it felt like to be something like a slave. Right.
Something like, yeah.
So we're going back to the syllabus. What are the reasons that Seth uses the name Lou instead of her actual name in the presence of a white woman?
Would you trust Amy? Seth is running. If someone get a hold of both of them, or Amy, and ask, have you met a woman named Setha? This is for her own survival. Like, trust no one.
Absolutely. No. Yeah. And the follow-up question that was the significance of naming the story and its relationship between Seth's relationship to Denver. And I think person means the naming of Seth's baby after Denver. I think she felt indebted. Not indebted, but like, who knows what happened to the baby.
There's also a system of names, right? Like, there's a system of names. Like, how are there 3 Pauls at Sweet Home? Why is Baby Suggs? Why is it Baby Suggs is called Joanne at Sweet Home?
Or Jennifer.
Yeah, a J name or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not called by their names.
Jenny,
so,
yeah.
It is an act of extreme love that is risky as hell for Setha to name her child.
Oh yeah.
A name with meaning, a name with memory.
Right, because they didn't name him.
Memory. So I think in this whole conversation about rememory and memory and wanting to lose rememory, like, the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, that for Denver to be named with a name that holds memory is
Mm.
and one of the only people in the book to be named with a book that holds memory is a
Mm.
big deal.
It is. It is. And I remember, I think I was watching an interview with Toni Morrison, and she was just speaking about like the lack of humanity that, the enslaved people had. And are they mothers if they were forced to be mothers? And you can't even name this being that came out of you. You can't really control what happens to them after. Are you a mother? Do you consider yourself a mother inherently after you've just done this thing? So
The child she had with somebody's son.
mm-hmm. Right.
So
So is it true?
there's a very big deal about, so that's why Denver is one of the only characters to have a name that was chosen by their mother, that was chosen
Mm-hmm.
a very risky love of child, and also out of a positive memory in an otherwise violent experience. I'm gonna overuse the word violent and traumatic,
It's
but
absolutely.
we can move into. Ooh, we still have a few more questions, and we don't got that much time left. So, consider the importance of storytelling and memory in the lives of Seth, Denver, Beloved, and Paul D. How does storytelling and sisterhood connect Beloved and Denver?
Hmm.
I think that gives Denver the opportunity again to finally be seen. There is somebody who sees her.
Hmm.
And Denver really falls in love with the way Beloved talks.
Hmm.
Like this sort of ah.
Hmm.
She just wants to hear the joy come from her all day, every day.
Yeah, I think she loves like this cavalier, childlike essence, yeah, of Beloved that she can't really find in herself to put forth. So to see this random girl come and just act this way and be welcomed in and kind of not be put on the same level as her, but now she has someone to dance around with and laugh with and really mirror herself, or just another person again after being so sheltered. It is a sisterhood in a way, although the power dynamics aren't questionable.
But even Setha becomes more loving or more
Hmm.
outwardly loving, right? And I think that's what I don't want to suggest that she was not loving at all, because her suffocating Denver was out of love, right?
Hmm.
She suffocated this child because she took the very risky action of loving this child. But
Right.
it comes back and it's like, oh, a child that she literally suffocates, and
Hmm.
then something clicks and it says, okay, now I can show outward love and outward joy,
Right.
and I don't just have to hold on to the thing that I'm trying to reach for, but I can't quite grasp onto.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, because the next question asks about how Setha and Denver's relationship is different without Beloved, and it does feel like initially
Hmm.
Beloved pulls out this sort of like this opportunity for Setha to be carefree,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is
I think I think she definitely does. And they're closer in age. I think Seth, there's like this type of familial structure that comes in when Beloved and both Paul D are there. And I definitely noticed more of a airiness, or just she became a little lighter, it seemed. And even when I think about this part when Paul D shows up at her job to tell her the news, and then he's like, nah, I can't do it. Even him thinking of that and seeing her and the light in her eyes, and him saying, oh, that's not the smile I recognize looking at the picture from Stamps. Like, there is some type of softness that's afforded to Seth after a long time of just grieving and literally just trying to make it through the days, that I think Beloved's presence adds to both her and Denver. We have someone who says, oh, they replied to somebody. I don't know where to reply to. this person said Denver was able to tell Beloved about a life that would have been hers. Now, in part 1, I did not read ahead. So I believe Denver realizes that Beloved is the personification of this spirit of the house, especially that, yeah. So it is a big sister relationship that they have. Although I don't think it's real, it's super authentic in Beloved's behalf, because like we said, there's definitely some type of darkness, or I don't want to say intent to harm, but just all y'all could go. I'm really just here for Seth at the end of the day. And I think Denver realizes this, but doesn't mind it, which highlights her need to have that sisterhood or just another woman in her life that isn't Seth, and kind of add to the diversity of relationships that she has been exposed to me. All right. Oh, we're running out of time. We got 4 minutes left.
Well, the rest of the questions and for part 1 are really around remembering and storytelling, and it acknowledges, and I think somebody mentioned this in the comments, Beloved urged Setha to tell her stories of diamonds and much more, and Setha obliged. What role did recalling these stories play in Setha's interaction with Beloved? What role did these stories play in Denver's life? And then it's also acknowledging that Paul D relies on a variety of re-memories and stories to assist him in navigating his relationship at 124. So how does Paul D's storytelling and memories assist or hinder him? His life at 124. I think for Beloved and Setha, it is like we get to this narrative of like the stories are painful, but because Setha so badly wants redemption from her daughter that has murdered, who has come back to her, she works through that pain to keep telling the stories for the first time. Denver has never fully heard these stories until Beloved existed. So I think maybe that is one of the best, even though it's painful and it's traumatic, that somehow it's still like there's some good in that the story comes out, the understand, like, and it's an opportunity for Denver to also better understand and love her mother, right? And not hold so much resentment or negativity towards her mother because she didn't realize the full scope of what Setha had been through.
Do you think she has some type of anger towards Setha, Denver?
At some parts, yes.
I don't want to say I think Denver sees her as like a figure that can do no wrong, but I think she gives her all the grace that she can, and she in her child brain, right? Because she's not grown. Well, is she grown? Do we know?
Did they go ice skating?
What'd you say?
In part 1, did they go ice skating?
I don't know if I remember that.
With the one shoe?
Was this a flashback? Flash forward? I do get lost in the timeline.
With Paul D leaving the home.
Yes.
When he tells Setha she got 2 feet. And then a forest grew up between them. Yeah,
it was very anticlimactic. Well, it was emblematic of their relationship and the respect they had for each other and stuff. But it was just kind of like, well.
Stamp paid in the end of part 1, closing out part 1, who helped get her children to 124, and then Setha to finish her journey to 124. But further in the book, there's a moment where there's a violent act by Beloved against Setha.
No, you're not talking about the choke. You're talking about something else.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that wasn't.
That wasn't part 1.
for sure. And Denver realized that too. She was just like, that was you. It's just it's a great book.
Okay, the ice skating was part 2, but I was trying to figure out was a choke. So they go to the clearing, and
Yes.
a spirit, like something chokes, not a physical choke, but something like a spirit, an energy choke, and it's the spirit of Beloved.
Yes, yes.
Choking the mother and not letting her up, and it's the way Toni writes. So I want to know what happened that listen to the audiobook of this. Because the writing, that was something I had to go back and read. Like, wait, what the fuck is that? And then what part of her did she kiss after?
Right. It was like, oh, this is a loving caress to, ooh, I'm dying, and then
what happened?
And then her saving her too, like, oh man, you got choked, and she's with the person who was choking her with Denver. Like, it was definitely something I reread about 3 times, but it's wild. That's abusive. This is a toxic relationship, to say the least.
It's abusive. That's the point, though. But somehow, like these memories that they hold on, it's not a cut and dry. It's not. Oh, my camera went out again. Look at me. It's not black and white situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is like, the memories help guide them, help move them. They definitely, even when they don't want to retell the story, they definitely impart how they act or react, or the decisions that they make in life, or the things that they do, or how they treat their children.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely fuels how Paul D moves, because Paul D is consistently like, nothing's as bad as Alfred, Georgia. Nothing's as bad as, is it Alfred or Albert, Georgia? Nothing's as bad as, being on that chain gang. Nothing is that. So like, the fact that he could survive that means that he can get through so much more. And then, Setha is like treating her children based on this interaction with school teacher and the harm she faced and being raped at Sweet Home.
So Priska says the audiobook makes it seem like Beloved literally choked her.
Yeah, I just downloaded it from my library, so I gotta figure out how to get the app on my phone. But once I do,
yeah, it would be fun to have like a joint watching or viewing of the movie.
We'll have to figure out how to do that. The last time we did it on Discord, but it's like,
okay.
I have to remember, even if only 10 of y'all join, it's still worth it.
Yes. I haven't seen it, so I'll definitely tune in if we do that.
We're gonna close out the discussion here. We'll let you know when we'll do part 2, part 3, and 4. So we'll do 3 more discussions at least.
Yes.
And if you have questions, if you are reading this, listening to it, and it don't make no sense, please leave comments on the Facebook group or in the Discord. We would love to be able to, have a conversation with y'all. I don't have to only be in the live discussion. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you all.
Fun.
Yes.
The rest of your day. Bye.
You too.